And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible Friday. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday, and welcome to day 3 of the most recent Democrat shutdown. Now, the only difference this time around is it would appear from polling that it's the Democrats who are getting the blame, and rightfully so. Really, when it comes down to it, the only reason why we have government shutdowns is that the Democrats won't compromise, while at the same time, they accuse you, by that I mean us, of not wanting to compromise. You see, the way the Democrats compromise is they say, we don't really care what your opinion is. This is what we want to do. And if you agree with us, we'll just say that the bill was bipartisan. That's their idea of compromise, which, of course, it is not a compromise at all. A compromise, of course, is a bargain that is struck between two parties in which neither one of them is happy. But the difference this time around is that Republicans have them over a barrel. Because the Democrats are advocating for more health care money for illegals. Though there are a lot of protestations on the side of the Democrat Party. The only difference being some of them have admitted the truth, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people in the media from claiming that, it is not possible for illegal immigrants to have health care. That doesn't happen. It's just not true. It's like all the liberals in Wyoming when they say that, that doesn't happen in Wyoming. Wyoming solutions for Wyoming problems. That's not a problem here. Except, of course, that it is. And it is in every state to varying degrees. The poster child out of this whole thing is the state of California, where they bilked the federal government, that is you and me, out of billions of dollars that went straight to health care for illegal aliens. And so, there are a couple of honest Democrats, if there is such a thing, that are admitting that that's exactly what the problem is, why they've shut down the government, why they've decided not to play ball, and all of it has to do with money for illegals. And I mean, there's a lot of little rabbit trails that come off of this story, but the long and the short of it is that, they do want to give your money to illegal immigrants. So that's one of the big stories today. But there's a lot of other things that get lost in the mix whenever you have a government shutdown. One of those is that, surprise, surprise, there were a ton of people arrested in Chicago who have been arrested in Chicago since we sent federal troops there. And then in the great Cowboy State, the BLM is at it again. This is an extraordinarily important story because it doesn't just apply to Wyoming. Wyoming is just the poster child right now for what the BLM wants to do. And keep in mind, this is the Bureau of Land Management under Donald Trump. Let me repeat that. This is the Bureau of Land Management under Donald Trump. And so that's a huge story that we're going to get to later on in the program. So there's a lot going on today's show. However, it is Friday, my friends, and that means that it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday. Today is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, most of the time during the week, you really kind of have to, talk about what I want to. It is my show after all, and the reason why you tune into it is to hear what I think of everything that's going on. But today, I want to hear from you, whatever's on your mind. I don't care if it's the topic du jour or if there's something else that's been stuck in your craw. Go ahead and give me a call. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. We'll keep the phone lines open for the entirety of the program. So whenever you feel froggy, man, just jump and give me a call. One more time, that phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead, call me up, whatever it is that you want to talk about. And, this is a great service that I do to you, the viewer and the listener. You see, you don't realize the tremendous peril that I put this program under every Friday, that I have no idea what's coming, and we'll just, it's basically your show. You run the show, not me this time around. But we begin in the great Windy City.
Chicago, Chicago, that toddling town.
Yes. From the Daily Wire, DHS arrests 800 illegal immigrants in Illinois raids as Trump deportations continue amid the government shutdown. You see, the DHS and ICE, those are a couple of those agencies that are going to continue working, regardless of what the Democrats do and how long they hold out to give money to the very people that don't deserve it. Aren't U.S. citizens, and they have no claim whatsoever to your and my money. But here's from the Daily Wire. DHS arrests 800 illegal immigrants, and I quote, Homeland Security agents arrested more than 800 illegal immigrants as part of its Operation Midway Blitz, and the massive raids will continue despite the government shutdown. Among those arrested were rapists, individuals with DUI convictions, and previously deported illegal immigrants, according to DHS. In one part of the operation, roughly 300 federal agents descended on an apartment complex teeming with suspected Tren de Aragua gang members. Quote, the Trump administration will not allow violent criminals or repeat offenders to terrorize our neighborhoods or victimize our children and innocent Americans, Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement regarding the arrests. The Trump administration's immigration raids in Chicago and the nearby suburbs started in September with the deployment of additional ICE enforcement agents around the Windy City. In response, protesters have taken to the streets in an attempt to block the agents from arresting illegal immigrants. Now, think about this. The governor of Illinois is saying that he would rather protect illegal immigrants than you, taxpayers, the very folks that pay his salary. He would rather protect illegal criminal aliens in this country, the Tren de Aragua gang members, gangbangers, like that Maryland man, the so-called Maryland dad. We'll get to him a little bit later on in the program. But they're far more interested in protecting criminals than they are you. And if you ever wonder why, all of it boils down to their desire to create a permanent voting base in this country. See, the theory being is that if the Democrats allow all these folks into the country, that they'll register as Democrats in, as a thank you, as a sort of gratuity. Thank you very much for allowing us into the country. The reality being, of course, that most of them won't vote, and that legal U.S. citizens in the country are predominantly more conservative than the Democrat Party is today. So really, it's a plan that in the end is going to backfire on them. And politically, it just looks horrible on them, protecting illegal alien gang members over you and preventing police officers and ICE agents from quelling protests in the city. The next story I've got coming up, the next one I've got in the stack of stuff is about Portland. So the president sent troops to Portland, and their violent protests erupted overnight. I guess it's been going on for a few nights. But the point is that wherever there are ICE enforcement agents that are legally arresting people who do not deserve to be in our country, the governors and the mayors of those states and towns are allowing violent assaults to occur without any sort of consequence whatsoever, because it fits the Democrat narrative, or the narrative that the Democrats think that you want to hear. The truth is, the vast majority of Americans are not in favor of all of this illegal immigration, as is evidenced by the election of Donald Trump, where, I mean, that thing was a landslide. It wasn't even anywhere close, even though Kamala Harris in her book says that it was the closest election in American history. Yeah, right. She was listening to Joe Biden too much. But back to the piece from the Daily Wire. While federal agents work to clean out the Chicago streets, Governor J.B. Pritzker expressed his disapproval of the effort. And I quote, "The Trump administration's DHS officers appear to be carrying large weapons around downtown Chicago in camouflage and masks. This isn't making anybody safer. It's a show of intimidation, instilling fear in our communities, and hurting our businesses." I'll tell you what's instilling fear and hurting businesses. Rampant crime perpetrated by illegal immigrants that are allowed to remain there by J.B. Pritzker. You can't tell me that there's a single business owner that really wants their business to be ransacked, for their goods to be stolen by roving gangs and flash mobs. You can't tell me that any business owner really wants that, because, I mean, it kind of runs contrary to the whole idea of owning a business and being able to sell stuff and not give it away. Democrats, my friends, are on the complete opposite side of the issues that Americans really care about. And, you know, I mean, the election of Donald Trump is enough, but just look at your state legislatures. Most of them, I shouldn't say most, a lot of them are not red or blue. They're a deep shade of purple. That was the case in Wyoming. And I would argue still that it's a pretty good shade of purple. You know, and it's because, you know, of low information voters. So the folks in power, they have an agenda all of their own. And, you know, it's insane as it is. That's the agenda of the American left. And I do mean like the upper echelons of the American left, the J.B. Pritzkers and the Kamala Harris people, and the rioters that are down on the street assaulting everybody and breaking into your businesses. DHS, however, remains undeterred, says McLaughlin. We will not allow sanctuary politicians or violent rioters to stop us from enforcing the law and arresting pedophiles, murderers, gang members, rapists, and domestic abusers from American communities. And that's the lie that the Democrat Party is trying to pull over on you, that these are just normal, everyday, hard-working people that just want a better life. They just want the American dream, the ability to work hard and to be successful and to own their own home. That's what these illegal immigrants really want. Well, it's not true. First, because the vast majority of the people that the ICE agents are arresting are violent criminals with criminal records that have already been amassed by the time that they've been here. I read you the list: pedophiles, rapists, murderers, gang members, Tren de Aragua, which I guess those are gang members too. But none of those people are upstanding citizens. And if the very first thing you do is to break American law, which to commit a felony, by the way, entering the country illegally is a felony. But if that's the very first thing that you do, how could anybody argue that you are just in search of the American dream, the American spirit, the idea that anybody can, if they have a good idea, can start a business? How could you possibly argue that that's the truth when there are, you know, gang members, pedophiles, child rapists? I mean, I guess pedophile is a child rapist. Human traffickers. How could you possibly make that? Well, it's with the help of the media. And, there's a great example that it's buried somewhere in the stack of stuff, that the media is trying to convince you that, well, first, that the government doesn't want to fund illegal aliens, which they absolutely do. I've got a couple of pieces of sound that I'll play for you here in a little bit that absolutely Democrats admitting that that's the reason for the shutdown. But they do want to protect violent criminals. And the question is why? Because it doesn't make any sense for the average, everyday person that lives in, on Mount Normal. It doesn't make any sense to us, but it does if you're a radical socialist or a radical communist. And here's their plan: overwhelm the system. I mean, it's the Francis Fox Piven strategy, bottom up. And this is, this has been something that folks like Glenn Beck, maybe only Glenn Beck, have talked about for a really long time. But Francis Fox Piven was writing in the late 70s, early 80s. And she had a plan to get socialism going in the country. And basically, it was just to overwhelm the system. And what you do, and she was talking about healthcare, but what you do is you get so many people on the government dole that it can't handle it. And then it just collapses. Well, when that collapses, the bottom will rise up out of frustration. You'll see riots in the streets. People will be really angry, right? When they can't go to the hospital, can't get the care that they were promised. And when that happens, you'll see violent riots. And we've seen some pieces of this strategy the last couple of years. And what you're witnessing in Chicago and in Portland is part of it. But you get the bottom to rise up. And then when the citizens can't handle it anymore, they'll cry out, please, somebody, God, please stop this. And then the top can come down. And what you end up with is an authoritarian style government. I mean, that was Francis Fox Piven. But if you apply it to what we've been watching, that is an attempt to maintain law and order. And then you have violent protests, which, by the way, most of them have some really nice-looking signs that were printed ahead of time. Kind of tells you that the whole thing was planned, right? And then in the end, those folks in power will say, okay, fine, we'll stop it. And they end up looking like the hero, allowing them to push their agenda in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, it's really no more complicated than that. And there's a reason why that strategy doesn't make any sense to people like you and me, because we don't think like that. The majority of the country is right of center, not center left, not the radical left. Most people vote with their pocketbook, and are just trying to, have a good life, pay their bills, raise their family, and be happy and have a good time. They don't think like a radical leftist, but because we have an abundance of low information voters, it's pretty easy for the media to convince you of things that are not true. Though I would say that this is on the decline. There are programs just like this one that maybe preaches the wrong word, but that tell you the truth each and every day on the ground level. And, this program is expanding. Here in a day or two, maybe early next week, I've got a big announcement of, another place where this program is expanding. And I'll just give you a hint. Go look up the OBBM network. Go check it out. You can find it on Rumble. But pretty soon you'll be able to watch Cowboy State Politics live on that network. So, smaller shows like this one, like your local investigative reporter, are telling you the truth. And a lot of folks, most people don't watch network news anymore unless you are addicted. And I don't know what type of drug you have to take to be addicted to watching The View, but a lot of people watch that. And, if that's the news that you're consuming, then that's what you're going to believe. You're going to swallow the Democrat narrative, hook, line, and sinker. And you may even believe that they didn't shut down the government because of funding illegal immigrants' health care, which they absolutely did. So I mentioned Portland a minute ago. This is a piece from Fox News, and it says that in Portland, it's the cops who are handcuffed because the local law enforcement isn't being allowed to do anything, and it's the governor of Oregon that's doing this. But from Portland, Oregon, Fox News, quote, for more than 100 nights in a row, Antifa thugs have taken over the streets in front of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility, hooting, hollering, and waving any flag that isn't Old Glory. As dusk descended on Tuesday, it was clear that they, not the hapless handful of police on hand, were in control. I later learned officers were told by their higher-ups not to engage the black-clad masked radicals who are now classified as domestic terrorists. If you've never seen Antifa at night in their natural menacing environment, I'd describe it as a mental asylum meeting in a Batman movie. It's almost hard to imagine that these characters are actually real. Not long after I arrived at the chaotic scene, a man drove up in a pickup truck, an American flag hoisted behind it. I asked the driver, Shannon, why he decided to come. And he said, because this is bull crap. Of course, he used the more descriptive term. Moments later, his truck was surrounded by masked Antifa members, one on an electric bike. Think about that, right? And a domestic terrorist riding an electric bike in a protest at night in Portland, Oregon. They mocked him for his usual sexualities, disparaging terms, and urged him to commit an act of violence against them. He knew better than to take the bait, but made his presence known before driving off. Not long after, across the street, the thugs set their sights on a woman in a white sedan. Her name is Helena, and I had just interviewed her. Born and raised in Portland, Helena had just told me, quote, our streets are ravaged. Just look at our streets. There's homelessness. It's full of garbage. Businesses are leaving. We are not a thriving city any longer. Now, her car was completely surrounded by masked Antifa losers, including one in a giant frog costume. I'm not even kidding. Women screeched at her as the soy boy miscreants berated her in belittling terms. It was clear the three officers standing by were going to do nothing despite her car being repeatedly kicked. So I made my way through to her, tapped her on the shoulder, and said, you should probably go. Helena replied, slightly panicked, I want to, but they won't let me. I looked up at her captors and said firmly, she wants to leave. Let her leave. And of all people, it was the frog man who shouted, let her leave, and I helped her back up without hitting anyone. As I crossed the street, one of the cops, hand to God, said to me, what happened there? I was gobsmacked, I said. They wouldn't let her leave, so I helped her out. And now the question is, what were you, the police officer, doing? Why didn't you help her? Well, they've been instructed by their higher-ups not to do a darn thing, not to enforce the law, not to impede any of these protests. It continues. A few minutes later, I heard some of the Antifa gang start chanting, run, Katie, run. And I knew the Katie in question would be the post-millennials Katie Daviscourt, who has been documenting Antifa outside the ICE facility for months. I turned, and I saw part of the crowd running, umbrellas attempting to block cameras. Daviscourt was pointing and saying, that one with the backpack. The journalist had just been smashed in the face with a flagpole, a burgeoning black eye forming as she, another journalist with her security, and I watched the Antifa crowd scream, Katie is a pedophile. That's a common tactic of theirs. The Antifa members formed a shield around the alleged assailant as Daviscourt spoke to police, pointing out who she thought hit her. Amazingly, instead of the police taking any immediate action, Daviscourt was told to walk almost half a mile away to meet two officers to make her complaint. Now, this is the precise problem, my friends. Could this protest be stopped? Could we clean up Portland and, put all of this violent criminal activity to rest? The answer is yes. There's no reason why radicals have been allowed to take over the streets of Portland except for politics. Because the governor of Oregon and the mayor of Portland, by the way, think that, having violent protests on the streets every night in their formerly fair city is somehow going to push the Democrat narrative that Trump is evil and that we have to have radical illegal immigration. The only thing these folks are doing, and the same holds true with Chicago, which is why I led with that, is that that they are radical communists, and make no mistake about it, my friends, socialism is on the march across this country, and it is radicals who have been elected through deceiving voters that this is allowed to happen. There's nobody in their right mind really wants to have violent, a downtown that is completely controlled by terrorist thugs. Nobody really wants that. But it is the Democrat radical politicians in power that think that is somehow sending a message to Donald Trump, and that if they resist long enough and allow criminals to destroy enough personal property, that somehow you will continue to vote them in, because in their belief you have been deceived by the mainstream media. Well, if they would have, if they've noticed at all, the ratings of the mainstream media have been on a steady decline for a really long time. And it's because people are finding out that they've been lied to for, a really long time. And the biggest one of those, probably, one of the biggest scandals in American history, is the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline. The use of his auto pen, where he was really not the president of the United States. In fact, I've got another story down here. It's from Fox News, and maybe you saw this yesterday, how the cue cards that the president carried around have been unearthed. And what they show is absolutely incredible, my friends, that he actually had to be shown a picture of Hillary Clinton to remind him of what she looked like. That was the president of the United States, and the media covered it up, all the while claiming that, oh, there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. But why should people trust the media any longer after that hoax has been perpetrated upon them? You shouldn't. There's absolutely no logical reason why you should believe anything that comes out of their mouth anymore. And the same holds true for media outlets, even in the Cowboy State and the Mountain West. You know, most people that live out here are largely conservative. And the reason why we voluntarily live in a place where it could snow 9 months out of the year, we only have 2 seasons in Wyoming, winter and construction. And the truth is you could have all 4 seasons sometimes in the same week. But the only reason we live out here is to be left alone so that you don't bother. So the government doesn't bother us and we can live our lives and do whatever the heck we want with them. Well, that comes at a cost because most of us are too darn busy with our own affairs that we don't pay attention to what politicians are doing, which allows us to fall victim to their lies when they knock on our doors and ask for our vote. And we're also at fault when we allow these folks to go to our state capitals and vote like the liberals that they really are. And if you look at any of the mountain states, like when I went to college in Colorado at Regis University in the early 2000s, so not that long ago, it was it was a lot like Wyoming. I mean, very conservative. Okay, bigger cities, but most of the politics pretty conservative. And then the Democrats took over, and now it's a liberal hellhole, and nobody in their right mind would want to live there. The lovely Christine and I. Well, I like to watch baseball. I think maybe that she watches baseball just to make me happy. But, the last time we went down there to watch a ball game, man, everywhere you walked, you just smell weed everywhere. And, I really don't care what people do in their personal lives, within the confines of their own home. But just don't involve me in it. And the trouble is that Colorado, with their legalization of drugs, effectively tripled the homeless rate almost overnight. And all of these are Democrat policies. They're one of the sanctuary cities. If you remember, I think it was 2 winters ago where, you remember when there was that really bad cold snap and it was like 20 and 30 below zero? Well, I interviewed Harriet Hagen right in the middle of that, and she exposed that the Biden administration was dropping illegal aliens into Denver in the middle of that cold snap. So, I mean, it just, and I'll have to go back and find that interview for you. It was quite a while ago. But her point was that the Democrats really don't care about these people. It is only a method by which they can push their agenda forward, and that is to create radical socialism. And I mean, there's no doubt about it. Well, by the way, as it relates to that, tomorrow I'm going to interview a good friend of mine. He's been on the program several times. His name is Ovi Muntean, and he's going to be speaking at the Reagan Day dinner here in Sheridan County, which is October 11th. And if you want to go to that dinner, I think ticket sales, at least online ticket sales, are ending pretty quick. But let me look up the website for you. But you just go to the Sheridan County GOP website, and I'll find that for you. GOP. If you go to scwygop.us, you can buy tickets to that Reagan Day dinner. And my pal, Ovi Muntean, is going to be speaking, and he's got an amazing story. Him and his family escaped communist Romania when he was 12, maybe a little bit younger. But anyway, he has an amazing story, and if you really want to know what real socialism is like, listen to him. So I'm going to talk to him tomorrow on the broadcast. We're going to record an interview, and then I'll probably publish it Monday on the podcast, and I'll play it for you Tuesday on the live program. You don't want to miss it, and you don't want to miss the Reagan Day dinner. It's going to be a great time. October 11th. Go to the Sheridan County GOP website to buy tickets. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the federal. There's a piece from the Federalist that tracks every single Democrat lie that's going on about illegal immigration, and there's a whole bunch of them. We'll do that when we come back, but first, an outrageous profit timeout. Here we go. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, Wyoming's conservative voice, doing what I was born to do, my friends, each and every day with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. We've been talking about the lies coming from the Democrat Party. And all of them, really. The Democrat message doesn't work in the real world. The only place that it works is in the halls of academia, in their little cloistered bubble, where all of their papers are peer-reviewed. By the way, anytime you ever hear the phrase peer-reviewed, what that means is they passed around whatever piece of trash that they wrote to all of their buddies, and all of their buddies that they hang out with all the time say, oh, yeah, that's great. You know, that's really brilliant. Nobody ever thought about that way. Yeah, no. We obviously are not funding illegal immigration. We're not giving them health care. Oh, no. See, the vast majority of the country, they're in favor of the 87 genders, and all of them agree with it. And then they put their stamp of approval on it, and it comes out, and you are told that, hey, this paper has been peer-reviewed. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that it's gone to some sort of very authoritative board that knows everything. No. That's not true. It's just one of the lies that the mainstream media perpetrates on you. And there's a whole bunch of them. Now, the Federalist has got a piece, and it's entitled, Let's Track Every Lie the Democrats and the Media Invented to Demonize Immigration Agents. And there are a ton of them. Most of them you've probably heard, but I think that they bear repeating just so we have a firm understanding of who the liberal media is. Now, the first one, and this was one that, man, I talked about this guy earlier in the week, the Des Moines, Iowa superintendent of public schools. I think that's his title. But he is the poster child for everything that is wrong with our immigration system. And the biggest part of that is we just don't enforce the law. Oh, by the way, it's Open Line Friday, and if you want to call and be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. I'll leave the phone lines open all program long if you want to call in. If you got something on your mind that you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a buzz, and we'll talk about it. But one of the biggest lies is that this sort of stuff doesn't happen, that everything the Republicans say, they're just stereotypes, really. I mean, it's not that none of that is true. It's just, they just make it up. Well, not in Des Moines, Iowa. So this guy overstayed his visa, so that means that he is in the country illegally. He's got older weapons charges. He's got fake identification, a fake Social Security card. He hasn't paid real taxes because his Social Security card is fake, and it doesn't exist. And we're paying him around $300,000 a year. From the Federalist, quote, corporate media feigned shock and awe in September when the superintendent of Iowa's largest school district was arrested on a deportation order and weapons charges. As the Federalist Joy Pullman reported, headlines about the high-profile detention focused on Ian Roberts' role in the school board or the school district. But according to ICE, however, the Guyana national was not only working illegally, but he attempted to evade arrest from ICE in a taxpayer-funded vehicle stocked with a loaded firearm. So he's got a school vehicle that he has a firearm in it, $3,000 cash, and a knife, though I'm not all that concerned about the knife. He was also in possession of the hunting knife and $3,000 in cash, according to the agency. As Pullman reported, over the last 5 years, Roberts bilked American taxpayers out of more than $1 million in the superintendent's salaries, plus $400,000 to settle 3 lawsuits accusing him of hiring women over men while leading a Pennsylvania school system. So he was sued, and we had to pay for his lawyers in addition to all that. That district could not verify his credentials, but still paid him, it's $180,000 per year, plus benefits for 3 years. So that guy is the poster child for everything that is wrong in our immigration system. And the biggest problem is that we just don't enforce the law. The school district should have never hired him. We do have this thing called E-Verify. All employers are supposed to verify that the person that they're trying to hire is a U.S. citizen and is eligible to work. But the school district didn't do that. They didn't verify any of his documentation. They took his driver's license, which he had from New York, and his Social Security card, which I think was issued in New York as well. And they just hired him without doing any of the checks. Here's another one of their bullcrap lies. The 5-year-old hostage. Yet another corporate media-led smear campaign against ICE kicked off with headlines accused agents of holding a young child hostage to goad her father into complying with detainment. NBC News, the national broadcast of communism, originally peddled the hoax that ICE agents used the 5-year-old daughter of an apparent illegal alien as bait to pressure her father into surrendering. The story prompted responses from Democrats, such as Ilhan Omar, who called ICE vile and beyond cruel. A correction notice retroactively applied to that article, however, confirming that the original story, quote, mischaracterized the activities of ICE agents. In the updated story, Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement that the father, quote, ignored law enforcement emergency lights to pull over and drive back to his house. He then fled from the car, gave officers the double middle finger, and darted inside a house. He abandoned his 5-year-old daughter in the car. Officers helped rescue the child and called local police to report the abandonment. So it was the exact opposite of what the media reported. Here's another one. Did you hear about the Utah violinist? The guy who's only interested in the creation of beautiful music. That all he does is go to his symphony and play his violin, and to provide Americans with beautiful, beautiful music. Well, in August and September, corporate media raised a ruckus about ICE's detention of the quote-unquote Utah violinist. Anytime they give a title to these people, like the Maryland Man or the Utah violinist, you know it's bullcrap from the very beginning. Dongjin Shin, a Korean national, was more than eligible for detention after DHS said he not only illegally overstayed his visa, but also received a DUI conviction in 2019. Coverage of his arrest, however, highlighted his role as a musician in the prestigious Utah Symphony and Ballet West, and the protests and fundraising efforts that followed his detainment. NBC News applied Shin's apparent justification for his DUI, his depression over his father's level 4 glioblastoma brain tumor. Yeah, it's okay to get all tanked up and go drive around and endanger everybody. And he should have been deported in 2019. It's not 2019 anymore. It's 2025. Then there was the kidnapping in California. Yulia Pelejes, Calderon's family held a press conference on June 30th, claiming that she was kidnapped at gunpoint by bounty hunters and was held in a warehouse until she signed self-deportation paperwork. Corporate media went ape crap about the abduction of the California community leader. Now, Calderon's story and photos of her rescue, which authorities said were made to look as though she was abused while in ICE custody, were fishy from the very beginning. Yet that didn't stop prominent Democrats such as Karen Bass from also amplifying the tale. News eventually broke, however, that Calderon seemingly faked the nabbing, even staging elements of it on a surveillance video, and was later charged with federal conspiracy and making false statements. But the Democrats and the propaganda press just moved on to their next information operation. Are you getting the point here that all of these big stories are entirely fabricated, including the Utah violinist, the kidnapping in California, the Maryland man, the father of Marines? Listen to this one. In June of 2025, corporate media tried to use a viral video of a heated Border Patrol arrest in California to undermine the credibility of ICE and Trump's illegal immigration enforcement efforts. Headlines about the lively detainment of repeatedly referred to the man in question as the father of Marines, noted his wife is an American, and claimed that he was violently detained and even beaten by federal agents. The truth is that Narcisco Barranco was not only illegally present in the U.S., but also appeared to try to evade arrest by threatening agents with a weed whacker. I'm not even kidding. You can't make this stuff up. Prompting them to take immediate action. So, threatening law enforcement officers, if you or I did that, we'd be locked up faster than you could say lickety-split. And then, of course, there's the MS-13 gang-banging Maryland man. In yet another attempt to criminalize Trump's immigration, and did you notice you haven't heard about him recently? Yeah, he was the cause celeb of Democrats for the longest time. Have you noticed that he's no longer in the news anymore? It's because every one of the Democrats' claims has been proven false. Well, anyway, in their attempt to criminalize Trump's enforcement plans, corporate media and Democrats spent the month of April clamoring over the deportation of the Salvadoran with suspected MS-13 gang ties and claiming that he was merely a Maryland father, a kindly American just trying to make his way in this cruel world by raising his children. Outlets purported that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was, quote, in the U.S. illegally lived under protected legal status and illegal resident. In reality, Garcia illegally crossed into the U.S. in 2011, faced potential removal in 2019. Evidence showed that he is a verified member of MS-13 and is also suspected of human smuggling and abusing his wife. While Abrego Garcia did have a withholding order that kept him from being sent to El Salvador, he did not have protected status that prevented him from being deported to another country. But remember, he's just a Maryland man that was hanging out with the Utah violinist, and they were both crying over the California kidnapping. Then there was the Chicago school ICE raid. And don't forget the Border Patrol whipping lie. You remember that whole thing that Border Patrol agents were whipping these poor, downtrodden immigrants? None of that really happened because they were just split reins. They were not whips. And then, of course, we could have the mass sterilization at a detention center. This one, I don't know if you heard of this one. During the first Trump administration, PMS-NBC's Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Chris Hayes appeared to defame a Georgia doctor when they peddled claims that he was performing mass unnecessary hysterectomies on women held at an ICE detention center. The story about the uterus collector was verifiably false from the start and resulted in a $30 million lawsuit against NBC Universal, PMS NBC's parent company. So the long and the short of all of this is anytime you hear a big, huge story about how this downtrodden, poor soul is being abused by the system, 9 times out of 10, and I don't know how many examples I read you, but it was a lot, 9 times out of 10, they're bullcrap from the very beginning. And that's anytime, and I shouldn't, it's so hard not to say this because So many of these stories are proven to be false, but you should just be skeptical of everything the mainstream media tells you. And just verify it. And this is the point, I guess, that I'm getting at. Do your own homework. Do your own research. When you hear something that, doesn't quite ring true, all of us have a truth detector inside our own head. And if you just pay attention to it, you'll hear something like, it doesn't even sound like that could be right. Go look it up. Don't listen to what I tell you. In fact, I'm right 99% of the time, but don't believe a word that comes out of my mouth. Go look it up for yourself. And the reason for that is so that you can make the argument on your own. And I promise you, if you utter the words because David said so, you'll be laughed out of the room, even though you're probably right. And anyway, do your own research, do your own homework, know what you know for yourself. Don't listen to me, even though I'm right more often than just about anybody else. So this healthcare thing, the Democrats are claiming that they didn't shut the government down. Oh, well, they're claiming they didn't shut the government down at all, except that every single Republican voted to keep it open. Well, except for one. Rand Paul voted with the Democrats, which is another issue entirely. But they are claiming that it has nothing to do with funding illegal immigrant health care. Now, Democrats denied that the shutdown is about health care for illegal aliens, except, of course, that a couple of them have admitted the truth. I played this video for you yesterday. Let me show it to you again. This is our good pal, Maxine Waters. And she admits that, it's all about, where the heck is it? Let's see here. Maybe it's not in there. Maybe it's yesterday. Maxine Waters. Yeah, here we go. She admits that they shut it down because everybody deserves health care. Watch this.
But aren't Democrats demanding health care for illegal aliens?
That's right. Democrats are demanding health care for everybody.
Everybody. Let's listen to it again.
But aren't Democrats demanding health care for illegal aliens?
That's right. Democrats are demanding health care for everybody.
Everybody, which I think would necessarily mean illegal aliens also. Now, Democrats, including Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York, have constantly claimed that the government shutdown has nothing to do with health care provided to illegal aliens. But one finally admitted the truth. Republicans have used the accusations to hammer Democrats in the media. But Democrat Representative Ro Khanna of California said during an interview that the issue was indeed part of the disagreement. Quote, the state of California, colluding with insurance companies who cover Medicaid beneficiaries, has created a money laundering scheme that results in California obtaining more than $19 billion in federal money. The amount of money that actually is going towards people that are undocumented is a small portion of the Medicaid cuts of the Affordable Care Act, Ro Khanna said. Listen to him say it.
In terms of health care, the reality is they're just not being honest. The amount of money that actually is going towards people who are undocumented is such a small portion of the Medicaid cuts or the Affordable Care Act, if at all. And so we can argue that point, but the reality that even the vice president would acknowledge, that anyone who looks at the numbers will acknowledge, is 90 to 95% of the funding we're talking about is talking about funding for American citizens.
Oh, but the other 10% is going to illegal aliens. But of course, Chuck Schumer, he is holding strong, shutting down the government, but it doesn't have anything to do with illegal aliens, except, of course, that two people have already said that it has. Schumer claimed that illegal aliens could not receive Obamacare benefits at all by law. Quote, let me be perfectly clear. Undocumented people cannot and will not receive ACA premium tax credits by law, period, Schumer wrote on social media. This is a lie from Republicans to divert attention from their shutdown. Republicans are refusing to lower health care costs for the American people, except there's this.
In terms of healthcare, the reality is they're just not being honest. The amount of money that actually is going towards people who are undocumented is such a small portion of the Medicaid cuts.
But see, Chuck U. Schumer, he has a problem with the truth. In fact, he doesn't even believe that his party shut it down at all. The truth is that old Chuck U. Schumer, he says it's all a lie. Now, don't believe what the New York Times. Oh, this isn't the right one, but this is funny.
That Democrats will be blamed for the shutdown. There are many more polls that show Republicans are blamed. The question in that poll is biased. Biased in the New York Times, but it's biased. If you turn the That's true. I don't always believe the New York Times. You can be sure of that. Neither do you. Okay.
All right. Good job, Chucky boy. That wasn't the video clip I was looking for, but I mean it's funny nonetheless. Let's see. I think it's in here. Let's see here. Yeah. So this is the video that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has been playing out of his, out in front of his office, and it's just videos of the Democrats saying we can't shut down the government. Listen to this.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want.
If the government shuts down, it will be average Americans who suffer most. A government shutdown means seniors who rely on Social Security could be thrown into chaos.
Families will be hurt. Farmers will be hurt.
It's the service members who will work without a paycheck. It's the firefighters who will be furloughed.
This shutdown, you know who's going to feel the pain?
God, this is just creepy.
Hurts? You.
Look at the grin on her face.
And the most vulnerable. Seniors, veterans, working families, hungry kids, y'all.
Democrats are signaling they're ready for a fight. This time, Schumer tells the Associated Press, quote, things have changed.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want.
Yeah. Well, and like I was telling you yesterday, the Democrats really don't care about the truth because they bank on the and largely this is true, that most people are low information voters and they're not going to take the time necessary to go back and verify all of their statements. Now, and here's the analysis from the state of California that I was referring to. The state of California, colluding with insurance companies who cover Medicaid beneficiaries, has created one of the most outrageous ones yet, reads a report from the Economic Policy Innovation Center. Quote, a money laundering scheme that results in California obtaining more than $19 billion in federal money without any state contribution over the period of April 2023 through the December of next year. So absolutely, there is money going to illegal immigration. And their health care, even though Chucky U. Schumer is swearing up and down that that's not the case. And again, it's their pals in the media that are trying to verify this claim. But like I said, there is no reason whatsoever that you should trust anything that comes out of the mainstream, definitely CBS, NBC, PMS, NBC. Don't trust them. But Fox is not outside of that group. You need to verify what they say also. Now, the Daily Caller spoke to John Thune, and he says that he's got some quote-unquote reasonable Democrats, if there are any, that are telling him about the shutdown and that they would really like to have an off-ramp on this thing. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told Newsmax Wednesday that several moderate Democrats are quietly telling him about their desire to end the ongoing shutdown. Congress failed to pass the stopgap funding measure on October 1st, prompting the federal government to shut down at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday. Thune said on the record with Greta Van Susteren that Democratic leaders are facing internal pressure as the shutdown battle drags on. Quote, Chuck's in a real tough spot. I mean, he cut a deal with the left-wing, radical left interest groups, and I think that's unfortunate because he's feeling real pressure on the hard left. Now, this is kind of a long video, but I wanted to play it for you just so that you can get a sense of, what more so-called moderate Democrats are telling the Senate Majority Leader. But check this out.
Well, no one ruled with an iron fist more than Speaker Pelosi in the House. I mean, she could control all her team. Does Senator Schumer have that grip on his party in the Senate? Because the way that when I spoke to Speaker Johnson, and he seemed to suggest that it was cracking a little bit, that he has Congresswoman AOC breathing down his back, maybe vying his seat.
Well, Chuck's in a really tough spot. I mean, he cut this deal with a lot of these left-wing special interest groups, and I think that's unfortunate, but it is because he's feeling pressure on his hard left. But I think there are a lot of reasonable Democrats in the middle. I mean, we're hearing from them, Greta. We're hearing from through my colleagues. They're reaching out. People want an off-ramp. They want a way out of this box canyon that Chuck Schumer has marched them into. But I don't know that he's going to be in a position to be able to make any kind of a concession, just simply because he has invested so much in trying to satisfy MoveOn.org and some of these other left-wing groups that have been controlling the actions he's been taking in the Senate. And this is the latest example of that. Up until now, he was never for this kind of thing. I mean, he was always the guy saying, you know, you can't take hostages, we need to keep the government open. Those were statements he was making in the past, and they're statements a lot of other Democrats were making in the past, who now have a completely different position when the shoe's on the other foot. But this is all about politics. The substance of this is very straightforward. Keep the government open. We'll continue the appropriations process, something we're doing this year that they didn't do when he was the majority leader, and help to fund the government in the right way through the normal appropriations process. And then we'll figure this whole ACA issue out. But it certainly is not something that needs to be a part of the hijacking that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have done to this short-term funding resolution, which is simply a 7-week, nonpartisan, clean, short-term funding resolution to keep the government open and to give us additional time to do the appropriations bills.
And it's a continuing resolution that the Democrats have voted to pass 4 times. It's the same thing, and all it does is keep funding levels where they're at right now. But the major sticking points, as you know, we talked about just a little bit ago, it's funding healthcare for illegal aliens. It's giving money to NPR and PBS and USAID and adding $1.7 trillion in spending from where we're at right now. And, you know, who was I talking to yesterday? But I can't remember. Maybe it was somebody in Christine's salon. But I said, you know what? I'm actually kind of in favor of this whole government shutdown, because we're going to be able to get rid of a whole bunch of federal employees. And think about this for a second. Does it bother you that we are paying non-essential government workers? If they're not essential, why are we paying them at all? If they're not essential, why does that position even exist? Why are we spending taxpayer money on it? Because the role of government is to only deal with those things that are enumerated in the Constitution that are essential to the proper functioning of a government. And I've got a story a little bit later. Let's see here. I don't know where it's at. But there's the African American Cultural History Museum that we dump millions of dollars into, but only sees an average of 5 visitors a day. It's just one example of the non-essential government funding that we think that we are having to, shell out our cash for. But I can't be the only one that says, hey, if you're a non-essential employee, we don't need to be employing you anyway because you're not essential. Well, let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, a big story happening out of the Cowboy state. The BLM is at it again. The Rock Springs RMP, it's back on the shelf. And this is in the Trump administration. So, we'll talk about that when we come back. It's a biggie.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Watching the news broadcast in the studio, it would appear that Sean Diddy Combs is being sentenced right now. I guess that hearing is underway. If there were ever a guy that deserved to be thrown in prison, it's him. Just watching the trial, I was amazed that he was acquitted of all that stuff. Of course, I wasn't on the jury, but we've got to start enforcing the law, my friends. If you violate the law, you deserve to be punished. Period. End of sentence. Full stop. All of that. And, the idea that because you are influential or popular or, you're a politician or whatever, that shouldn't even figure into any of it. And in fact, if you're a politician and you break the law, you need to be held accountable, and I would say to a higher degree. A good example of that is Tim Salazar, the vice president of the Wyoming Senate. It wasn't that long ago that Cowboy State Politics broke the news that he engaged in log rolling, and I've got video of him admitting it. Log rolling means that you get kicked out of office. Gone. Bye-bye. You could never come back. But nothing happened. Nothing to see here. Don't pay any attention to this. That guy on Cowboy State Politics, he's not really legitimate news anyway. Actually, one of the head guys at the Wyoming Press Association told me that, they don't consider you to be legitimate. Yeah, I don't care. I don't consider them to be legitimate either. They're the ones that lie all the time. And it's true, my friends. All you got to do is, read a couple pieces from any Wyoming news source, and just try to be objective about it. And you'll find that it is chock full of opinion. Most of it isn't news, which is why you should pay attention to this program and not all the other bullcrap. From the the Cowboy State Daily. Here we go again. The controversial Rock Springs RMP plan reopened for public comment. And I quote, after years of being drafted, then declared finished, then put on hold, the BLM's controversial plan for managing millions of acres in central Wyoming is again open for public comment. Now, there's reason to hope it will get done right this time, and the matter will finally be settled, according to Wyoming State Senator Larry Hicks of Baggs. However, some environmental groups criticized the move to revise the plan yet again, saying it should remain as it was when the BLM finalized it in 2024. The only problem was it was Joe Biden and his Bureau of Land Management, Casey Stone Manning, that was in charge of that whole thing. And literally, it would have shut off millions of acres of Wyoming to any human contact. I mean, that's absurd from the very beginning. We have these things called wildfires, and, you know, it's public land. It's not owned by the federal government. It's owned by you and me. And then the other big problem is that, federal public land, state public land, private land, it's all checkerboarded in Wyoming. So if you look at we call it a BLM map, but the big map of Wyoming that has, you know, all BLM property and state land and private land on it, it really does look like a checkerboard. And in the Rock Springs RMP, there were huge swaths of private land that were out in the middle of federal land. And so if the RMP went through, many, many private landowners would not be able to access their property because of something the federal government said. And quite frankly, in the Constitution, it is Article 1, Section 8, I believe. I'll look it up while I'm discussing this. There's only a small list of things that the federal government can actually own. And huge chunks of each western state is not one of them. Let's see here. Just let me look through here real quick. Maybe. Anyway, but I'll find the right. Oh, here we go. Got it. Okay. The government of the United States, and to exercise the authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out into the execution of the foregoing powers of all the powers vested by this Constitution. So the list is erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Now, of course, we don't really need forts anymore, and we probably don't need arsenals, though. You could probably call a military base an arsenal. But you'll notice in the Constitution, it's a very short list. And so it was never, and they're entitled to own the property around Washington, D.C., too. But other than that, there's nowhere in the Constitution where it says the federal government can own huge, giant pieces of each state. I mean, that's just not, it doesn't say national parks in there. It doesn't say national monuments. All of those things are extra constitutional. But try convincing, anybody in the government that that's actually true. All you got to do is, if you ever find yourself without a copy of the Constitution, find the closest politician to you and ask them for it. They'll pull one out of their back pocket and it will be bright and shiny new because they've never opened it. It's absolutely the truth. During the legislative session, you'll hear Constitution this, Constitution that, not constitutional all day long. But the reality is most of them have not even read it. So, I mean, like I say, if you need a copy of it, find the closest politician to you, and they'll be able to hand one to you. Now, the BLM manages about 3.6 million acres of land from the Rock Springs office. Rock Springs is kind of southern central, Wyoming, west central Wyoming. Don't ever go there. The only reason I go to Rock Springs is if I have to. And I determined a long time ago that there is no way I'm going to voluntarily travel on I-80 ever again. I don't care how long it is that I have to go around to get where I'm going. I'm not traveling on I-80 anymore. Ask me Man, I got stuck on Elk Mountain one day in the middle of a blizzard. Never doing that again. The irony being, during that trip where I was stuck on Elk Mountain, my mom called me. I was stuck on the top of it in a blizzard, in traffic, wasn't going anywhere. And my mom calls me and she goes, you got to be careful on I-80. We got stuck once on Elk Mountain. And I was like, well, Mom, you're never going to guess where I'm at right now. Stuck on Elk Mountain. All right. Anyway. So the bulk of this 3.6 million acres that the BLM wants to shut off is in Sweetwater County. The agency's preferred alternative for the plan is Alternative B, which would have designated 1.8 million acres, or about half, as areas of critical environmental concern, which means no human contact. The alternative drew fire from many in Sweetwater County and across Wyoming, who urged that it would be far too restrictive on energy development, cattle grazing, and the like. Governor Mark Gordon and Harriet Hageman attempted to block the RMP through legislation. And in the end, it was the Trump administration that put that thing on the back burner. But now it is also under the Trump administration that this thing is up for public comment again. And so my guess is that Trumpy probably has the wrong people advising him on this whole thing. The BLM finalized the RMP in December of 2024 at the tail end of the Biden administration. Shortly after Donald Trump took office, it was put on hold. And the call for a new round of revisions is in response to Trump's executive orders aimed at ramping up the country's energy production. Hicks said, that's Larry Hicks, said that he's optimistic that this time around the RMP will be still steered back towards its original intent and in accordance with the wishes of most Wyomingites. So while the public comment period is open, the hope is that it's not going to be the opus of radical environmentalists. The Biden area Alternative B blindsided many cooperators who had put years of work into the RMP that matched Wyoming's values. The cooperators included local and state officials, various stakeholders who worked on the RMP to draw up a plan that tried to strike a balance between conservation and multiple use. Now, here's one thing that a lot of bureaucrats, many people, bureaucrats included, don't understand. There is a difference between conservation and preservation. Conservation, or let's start with preservation. That is preserving whatever piece of property in its form right now and not allowing any changes to it. Preserving it as it sits right now. Conservation is the responsible use of resources. And a good example of that is the wildlife management system in Wyoming. Wyoming has the what I consider the finest wildlife outfit, the Game and Fish, in the entire country. I mean, you could stack them up against any other Fish and Wildlife Service, and they're far better. And the reason why Wyoming has such abundant wildlife is they are managed. That we take great pains in figuring out what the population of whatever animal it is, elk, deer, antelope, whatever, and then issuing permits to manage that population accordingly so that it is sustained. So that you want to have hunting and fishing, but you have to manage those populations. And so you only sell a certain amount of licenses for every animal, and that you engage in proper management of those populations. Because if you don't, if the population explodes, and it's any population of animal, including us, you'll see a giant disease outbreak. There's one that affects just about every animal population for ungulates, so deer, elk, antelope, those things. Chronic wasting disease is one of them. In fish, it's called whirling disease. Rabbits, it's called tularemia. And in humans, pick a disease. But anytime the population grows to such a level that the resources that are there in a given area can't support it, you see disease break out. And that's why we conserve that resource. Similarly, oil and gas. Those resources are there. They're property of Wyoming and American citizens. They should be exploited. But you can do that responsibly. Years ago, and it probably still is a program, but every year a group of staffers from Washington, D.C. would come to Gillette and go look at the coal mines to find out, okay, coal is not this dirty, nasty resource that everybody makes it out to be. And one of the exercises was they would take them out to an area where on one side of the road, it was virgin ground, hadn't been mined yet. And on the other side, it was reclaimed ground, already been mined, and they'd put it back to its where it was before they started. And the question was always, okay, so which side of the road do you think has been mined and that is reclaimed? And every single time they pick the side that has been reclaimed as virgin ground. Now, the reason I bring this up is most companies, almost all companies, not all of them, most of them, almost all, operate responsibly. It is far less expensive to do things the right way than it is to be sued and have to come back and fix whatever mess you've created. And so there's a myth of these evil energy companies exploiting everything. And the truth is, the folks that are exploiting our natural resources are those idiots putting up windmills and solar panels. I mean, go to the base of any one of those windmills, and it looks like somebody has been changing their oil at the base of that thing for 25 years because it takes a tremendous amount of petroleum, not green energy, according to the lefties, to operate those windmills. You got to grease the motor, man. And if you don't, the thing explodes, which it's pretty funny, I think, to see one that's burned up. But yeah, you go to the base of them, they're not green. And the only reason why they're profitable is that there are subsidies that go along with them. So this Rock Springs management plan, it needs to be done in the best interests of landowners and the state of Wyoming. The federal government just needs to back the heck out of it and let us manage our own property. And, hopefully the RMP will be done in order so that we can exploit those resources. And, and exploit, the word exploit gets kind of a bad rap because it has connotations to it that you're just going to use something and throw it away. By exploit, I mean to mine, to drill for oil and gas and do it in a responsible manner so that we can produce affordable energy for everybody. Wyoming produces far more energy than we actually consume. And the truth is, Wyoming is the nation's energy leader, both coal, oil, natural gas, all of it, uranium. It's Wyoming. And so if you want your electricity rates to go up, if you want them to, as Obama said, necessarily skyrocket, then sure, go along with the RMP plan and cut Wyoming out of the thing. Because if you do, your electricity rates are going to go up, and they will go up across the country. It's a fact, my friends. Well, let's see here. So I mentioned earlier in the broadcast about the women on The View. Notice I didn't say ladies. I said the women on The View, warning that Trump will absolutely use the shutdown to his advantage. The only thing I have to say to that is, of course he will, and he should, because the Democrats were dumb enough to shut down the government. When that happens, the legislature pretty much gives all of its money spending authority to the office of the president. So he's the only one that's still there. And so all of these so-called non-essential workers, well, they need to be on the chopping block. This is from the Daily Wire. Quote, former White House official Alyssa Farah Griffin argued on Wednesday that President Donald Trump absolutely has a plan for the ongoing government shutdown and how to best use it to his advantage. Absolutely, he does. And he should. If he doesn't, he's a moron, which we all know that he's not. The ABC Always Broadcasting Communism midday show opened with a discussion between Griffin and her other co-conspirators about the shutdown that Senate Democrats triggered on Tuesday, and who was most likely to be blamed if the parties were unable to quickly reach an agreement and get things open. Griffin cited polling that suggested Democrats were likely to feel the brunt of the public's anger, saying, quote, there's polling out there that says that, 4% will blame Republicans and 23% are going to blame Democrats and another 34% blame both sides. I'd probably be in the latter bunch, but it is the Democrat shutdown. All the Republicans, save one, voted to keep the government open. Even on the Obamacare subsidies, you could pass it as a standalone bill, she added, referencing one of the key sticking point issues. It does not need to be tied to shutting down the government. While I constantly hear that Donald Trump has too much power, the White House, the executive branch, has too much power. By shutting down the federal government, Congress, you've given up spending power. So here's a piece from that episode of The View, and it's just another example of how the Democrats and the media are lying to you about the shutdown. Watch this.
After a midnight government shutdown that has both sides of the aisle claiming they didn't do it, we're again paying the price. Take a look.
The Democratic proposal is designed to prevent millions of Americans from losing their health insurance, losing Medicaid coverage, or paying higher health care premiums. Why are you against that?
That's an absurd statement, what you said there. Let's be clear about what happened last night, George. No, George, the Democrats said instead that they wanted to give health care to illegal aliens instead of keeping critical services provided for the American citizens. That's what happened, plain and simple.
Donald Trump and Republicans have shut the government down because they don't want to provide health care to working class Americans. Federal law prohibits the use of Medicare, Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and the Affordable Care Act to provide health insurance in any way, shape, or form to undocumented immigrants, period, full stop.
Yeah. And we want to just say it one more time. The administration is claiming this is about Democrats wanting to give health care to undocumented people. This is not true. The Democrats want federal subsidies to continue to help American citizens afford Obamacare policies and reverse cuts to Medicaid. Neither of those changes, neither one of those changes would provide health coverage to undocumented immigrants. They are not eligible for any of those programs, none of them, and haven't been for decades. Not eligible, against the law. They're not telling you the truth, though.
They keep throwing them out of the country anyway. I don't know what they're talking about. Who are these people that are getting it? They keep getting it.
Yeah, it's not true. Not true at all.
In terms of health care, the reality is they're just not being honest. The amount of money that actually is going towards people who are undocumented is such a small portion of the Medicaid cuts or the Affordable Care Act, if at all. And so
it's just a small portion. Don't worry about it. It's not that big of a dollar amount. But wait a minute. The View just said that, it's not true. None of that is true. Now, that's not the soundbite I was referring to in the piece, but it's part of it. The other one, where Trump has a plan, it's really long, and I don't want to play it. I mean, there's only so much of The View you can handle in any given day. And if you take too much of it, you end up overdosing, and, it's worse than fentanyl. It really is. I mean, it rots your brain, and really, ladies, if you're watching The View, or if you have friends that watch The View, please go tell them to stop. I mean, it will rot their brain, and they'll end up having to go to some sort of re-education camp somewhere. I mean, it's just, or an insane asylum. Either one of them. I hear Trump wants to open those up, which I think is a good idea. Oh, by the way, while we were watching that, I did go find the soundbite that your electricity rates will necessarily skyrocket. And I realize it's not on topic, but I just found it. It's a blast from the past. We should listen to it.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal power plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations.
Yeah. You'd have to retrofit. And by the way, Governor Gordon did that too. He's got this stupid policy that you have to have scrubbers on your power plant, with CO2. His direct air capture, which is the biggest boondoggle I've ever heard of. You know what direct air capture, what a direct air CO2 capture device looks like? They're about 100 foot tall and they're green on top. Go plant a tree if you want to capture greenhouse gases. The truth is that every full-grown tree in the world eats about 40 pounds of CO2 every single year. And if you do the math, just kind of back-of-the-envelope math, I'm sure the numbers are a lot bigger. But the Bighorn National Forest, which is only, it's pretty small, concentrated place in Wyoming, just the trees there are enough to consume enough CO2 for 20 million households. So don't let anybody feed you this line of bullcrap that, we're destroying the environment. Climate change is real. If you really believe that, go plant a couple trees and call it a day. That's all you got to do. But there's so many lies coming from the Democrats, and this illegal immigration one is just one small part of it. But the Democrats, none of them, and again, I'll say it again, my friends, their ideas don't work in the real world. They never have, which is why every time there's a Democrat administration, it tanks the economy or comes pretty darn close to it, or initiates policies that you're really going to regret later on. Take, for example, Bill Clinton's most favored nation status with China. I mean, at the time, the liberal media said, oh, this is great. You know, the Chinese, they're going to become just like us. If they can buy our products, they'll believe in freedom and liberty, and it'll be great. Except that all of our manufacturing went over to China, and now we don't even produce Tylenol. Except for that small problem. Oh, and all the rare earth minerals that are necessary to run these little guys. Yeah, they'll produce those. So, like every Democrat policy, every one of them, doesn't work in the real world and has disastrous consequences to all of us. Well, let's see here. You know what? I've got this great piece from The Hill, and it dovetails pretty nice with what we're talking about. But I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a break, and then I'll dive into it after this. So let's take our last break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about how the Democrats, yeah, they really do believe in socialism. The Hill is admitting it. Back in a minute.
Rocks now down, nothing left to take. No one gets today. We got to face the truth, nights far away. Tell me what you want, here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now down, don't ask why.
It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listened to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand, and I've got a pretty cool announcement coming next week. Might have something to do with syndication. That's going to be fun. Anyway, my friends, welcome back to the program. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. We still got about half hour left in the show. So the piece I was referring to before the break is that the Democrats, it used to be that they would never admit to the word socialism. That anytime that came up, every Democrat would turn tail and run because they didn't want to be associated with that word. But as things become normalized the Democrats warm up to it, and some of them think that it's okay to to let that word out, to in some cases use that. We've got this guy in New York that's Zoran Mamdani, that he is he's openly talking about socialism and how we have to be unapologetic about our socialism. And let me just see if I can find the soundbite for you, just so we know exactly what we're talking about. Man, there we go, got it. So here we go. This one, he says, let's see here. Man, I need my producer back. I really do. But here he says we have to be unapologetic about our socialism. So listen to this.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists. And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism.
Yeah, we got to ensure that we're unapologetic about it. And if you thought that was just kind of a one-off, that maybe then he was just talking out of his hind end, well, here he is saying we have to seize the means of production. A famous line from our pal Karl Marx.
But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support.
Okay, so he's being blatantly honest with you. Like, he's a socialist, he's a communist, he really does want to do these sorts of things. But and the likelihood that he's going to be the mayor of America's biggest city is pretty high, unless there's something, some sort of miracle that happens and Andrew Cuomo actually, pulls it off. I don't see how that's going to happen. But, unless that happens, a radical communist socialist is going to be the mayor of New York. Now, there's a piece in The Hill entitled, "Democrats on All Levels Are Mainstreaming Socialism." Why wouldn't they? Because there's polling out that suggests a large portion of the Democrat Party does believe in socialism. And and it's not that like the people who tried socialism before just didn't know what they were doing, that they did it wrong the time before. This time we'll do it right. It's democratic socialism, which, by the way, is not a thing. Socialism and democracy are two diametrically opposed ideas. The only reason the Democrats throw the word democracy in front of it is to make it sound better. But here's from The Hill. Democrats are mainstreaming socialism. A recent polling shows socialism is already embedded in their party's mainstream. And this is from The Hill, so it's not exactly the conservative journalism bastion. We're not talking about the Federalist here. This is The Hill. But by bowing to the will of their majority, the Democrat Party threatens to bring socialism into America's mainstream via the two-party system. Those who thought socialists running on Democratic tickets were anomalies should think again. Democratic socialist Zoran Mamdani, the Democrats' nominee for New York City, and Omar Fattah, whose initial endorsement by Minneapolis' Democratic Farmer Labor Party is now revoked and in dispute by the state party, are part of a far bigger trend in the Democrat Party. An early September Gallup poll on America's perception of capitalism and socialism shows the latter is now heavily preferred by Democrats. In 2010, 50% of Democrats viewed socialism favorably. Today, 66% do. And in just 15 years, the percentage of Democrats viewing socialism favorably has gone from half to almost two-thirds. In contrast, over the same period, the percentage of Democrats who at least view capitalism favorably has fallen from a bare majority of 51% to just 42%. And so the majority of the Democrat Party thinks that socialism would be great, that we should focus on that. No, never mind. And they don't believe this either, that socialism has been responsible for the deaths of tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of people. They don't believe that. Because, they did it wrong before. We'll do it right this time. Now, the poll results remove any ambiguity about a May 2019 Gallup poll that found 74% of Democrats would support a socialist for president as their party's nominee. And how close did Bernie Sanders get to being the nominee of the Democrat Party? Had the Democrats not cheated him out of it, he may very well have been the party nominee. We'll never know because, the Democrats don't play fair in anything. Taken 16 years ago and on the threshold of the 2020 election, there could have been an assumption that politics was influencing the poll results. After all, self-described Democrat socialist Bernie Sanders had received strong support in the 2016 Democrat primaries and was seeing the Democratic nomination in 2020. Further, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the donkey with the big eyeballs, another Democratic socialist, had become a party star after her upstart House seat win in 2018. So, perhaps Democrats' acceptance of a socialist nominee was a combination of politicians' personal appeal, that would be Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, and party loyalty, and that is willingness to support the party at all costs, updating the old standard of yellow dog Democrat and blue dog and red dog Democrat and blue dog Democrat. I thought all those terms were dumb because we're not in a space where those things actually exist anymore, which I think is the point that the Hill is making, that we live in a time where the Democrats support their party at all costs to the exclusion of all else, that no matter who the Democrat nominee is, that person has to win. Today's poll results on socialism itself, not simply socialists, brush aside doubts about how Democrats feel and where their preferences lie in politics and economics. As these and other polls show, Democrats are moving to the left. In 2013, the Gallup poll showed that liberals were at a new high of 54% within the Democrat Party. So the Democrat Party is being taken over by socialists, and new polling suggests that socialism is more popular than ever. And I mean, again, this has been the long running goal of the party. We have schools that teach our children that socialism is good, that we should elect socialists, that the free market is broken. In fact, go to the interview I did with Carly Provenza and Mike Yin. We were talking about affordable housing, and I made the argument that, well, we should let the free market figure out affordable housing. If there is a need, the free market will provide. And Carly Provenza actually said, yeah, but the free market isn't taking care of it. Whoa! Coming from a person that probably never believed that in the free market to begin with. But it was an outrageous statement from a Wyoming Democrat. We're told in Wyoming that, well, I'm a Wyoming Democrat. I'm different than the rest of them. That's bullcrap. No, you're not. The stuff that I heard during that interview is no different. Maybe the particulars are different, but the substance of it wasn't any different than any other Democrat that any of us have come into. Let's see here. You know what? Let's do something a little bit fun. It's been kind of a dreary day on the program, talking about socialism and communism and all that. Let's talk about Tampon Tim Walz. There's a piece in the Daily Caller. Excuse me. And it's called "I Let Her Down." Tim Walz suggests that he was too nice to J.D. Vance, and that's why he lost. Not that he's an incompetent boob, but because he was too nice. And I quote, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz suggested during a talk at the MinPost Festival, posted on YouTube on Tuesday, that he was excessively kind to Vice President Vance during their 2024 vice presidential debate. Walz stumbled and made gaffes through his only debate, which was reported as largely civil and Midwestern nice. Walz said during the MinPost talk, which took place on Saturday, that former Vice President Kamala Harris's criticism of his debate performance in her new book was justified. So first, let's take a look at a quick montage from that debate, and then I'll show you the video where Tampon Tim says, he was just too nice. But here's a montage from that debate.
a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment.
Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos. Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line.
When we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, Donald Trump's fickle leadership. Donald Trump is fickle.
If you blame Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is, you're running me, not mine.
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
My community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this, so I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protest.
So there's the debate performance, right? And if you watched it, and by the way, that is a thing at our house, me and the lovely Christine. If it's debate night or if there are election returns or anything like that, that is a big deal at our house. That means we stay up until it's over, until we know. And it is, the lovely Christine is a big football fan. So I don't know if, a debate is like the Super Bowl, but it's close. And so we were watching that vice presidential debate just rolling on the floor at how bad he actually did. But Tim Walz is claiming that the reason why he lost that debate was not because of the terrible performance. It was because he was too nice. He was too nice to the vice presidential candidate. Here he is saying it.
I do think I let her down on a couple things. And I warned him, my Minnesota nice thing is, if somebody's being nice to me, I'll be nice to them.
You're talking about the debate with J.D. Vance, where
these people have seen me debate. I know my subject. I'm pretty good at it. I don't think I'm particularly mean.
Do you think you helped J.D. Vance win by allowing him in that debate to show a more collegial side of himself that perhaps had not been evident to the American
people? Well, I think it did do that. His in the numbers afterwards, I was still, went up on this, but if the vice presidential debate mattered, Dan Quayle would have never been vice president with Lloyd Benson, but it did matter. It did matter, though, and it was, I think, in the moment we were in preparing for that, and quite honestly, we did not prepare for him to be more cordial. The expectation was that he would do the false attacks and do some of that, and they didn't. So I'll give them this. They were well prepared. But my goal was to try and find, getting there. And I'm saying, we all want to fix immigration, but you're doing the dogs and cats stuff. What we're talking about is fixing the system, adjudicating, asylum claims faster.
Yeah, that's clearly what they were talking about.
That was viewed as me trying to find common ground. And the teacher in me, and this is nervous tick or habit that we have when you're a teacher. When someone else is speaking next to you, you instinctively nod and listen and try and listen. And that was viewed as, and the vice president took it that I was agreeing on some of the things that were a personal attack on her, and it wasn't that at all. Because when we're teachers or in any other one, like, that's really interesting. It's dumb as hell, but it's very interesting. And, I was doing that. So I think in fairness to it, but I think we have to reckon with what she brought up, some very valid points. How's America going to elect someone that's other than an old white guy?
Clearly, it's not that he sucks at debating. No, that he was terrible in it. It's that he was too nice, and that's the narrative that he's trying to push, is that, I didn't get my tail kicked by J.D. Vance. No. See, I just tried to be too nice. It wasn't all the gaffes. It wasn't that I've lied about my military service that amounts to stolen valor. It's not that I lied about being in China. It's not that I was in China at all. No. None of that has anything to do with why we lost. It was that I was too nice. Yeah. Moderator Lulu Garcia Navarro cut Walz off, asking whether the governor, and this is during that interview, the piece that I just played for you, believed that he boosted Vance by enabling him to demonstrate, quote, a more collegial side of himself during the debate. Walz appeared to concede that that he had before, suggesting that the vice presidential debates were insignificant, and then immediately backtracked. Quote, he said, "It did matter, though, and I think in the moment we were in and preparing for that, and quite honestly, we did not prepare for him to be more cordial." And, what you can take from that is they sucked at debating, that they lost it, that Kamala Harris can't string two sentences together. And they were terrible candidates. And, the American people saw through everything they were trying to do, and there was no way that the Democrats could get around it. When you have a vice presidential candidate like Kamala Harris, let me just see here, that's saying stuff about, I don't know. Listen to this one.
Well, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation. What does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
What does it show you? What in ever does it show you? I mean, what is about the constellation? There's just about, there are so many things. Listen to this one.
Well, I was in a stroller. I was in a stroller, and so I was out there. And in fact, my mother used to have a very funny story about I was fussing, and she said, "Kamala, what do you want?" And I said, and this is how she would say it, and she said, "Kamala, what do you want?" And I said, "Freedom."
Yeah, unfortunately, that is entirely contrived because that is a story that Martin Luther King Jr. told. But not only, and here's a classic one, right? Check this out.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
Can you imagine putting up with her for 4 or God help us all 8 years? Well, Walz's suggestion that he was too nice to J.D. Vance is just an example of the Democrats making excuses for them losing the heart of the country, losing by the heart of the electorate. All of the flyover states, as Barack Obama called all of us, that the Democrats have lost their course and they have no idea what the American electorate wants or believes in. And it is absolutely true. Now, if you go back to the previous article from The Hill, that the majority of Democrats believe in socialism, that's just another example of where they are so far off base from the average everyday American. Most Americans don't believe in socialism. In fact, they remember some really bad stuff that happens every time you try any sort of socialism. It's poverty, misery, and death. And, again, I would argue that the country is more right of center than any other. That most people are kind of right of middle down the road. They vote with their pocketbook. They're conservative. They just want to be left alone. And it is only the radical fringe, people like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, that believe in all this bull crap, that are trying to push radical policies. The LGBTQ ZXP WDS lobby and all of it. That men can become women and women can become men, and that you should allow men to change in the women's locker room and allow men to compete in women's sports. The majority of Americans don't believe that. The middle of the country does not believe that. That is the radical fringe. And if you want to know, and I covered this yesterday, and I got a lot of great feedback on it, but the whole segment about Sydney Sweeney, that the reason that the Democrats are so ticked off is they have been unable to convince you of things that are not true. And at the end of the day, my friends, we dodged a bullet with Donald Trump, no pun intended, that had Kamala Harris won that election, I really believe that it would have been the end of the republic. And, not just because of how incredibly idiotic she is, but it would have been an acceleration of the 4 years that we experienced under Joe Biden. So anyway, tampon Tim Walz, they can make all the excuses that they want, but the truth is that they have lost the middle of the country, and there's no way that they're going to get back at it. A piece from The Blaze. And it's an opinion piece. Let's hear it. It's by McCubbin Owens, and he says that calling MAGA fascist is a smear to the entire country. Now, see, conservatives, we want things like natural rights, freedom, right? Individual responsibility, individual freedom, the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to practice our religion in any way that we see fit, and the freedom of conscience, right? That you have the right to believe any way that you want. We want those natural rights protected and sovereignty preserved. Progressives, they want the state enthroned. So it is, if the main question between Republicans and Democrats is one of natural rights and freedom versus state control of everything. That's the whole reason why the Democrats were in your house telling you which light bulb to screw in and which stove you could buy and which car you could drive, because they have to be in control of everything, because that's the only way that they're going to get you to go along with their plans. Because if your plans don't work, as is all Democrat ideas, then you have to continue to push your agenda through force. Because the mainstream America is not going to go along with it. Most people, like I said, most people in the middle of Wyoming are not going to go along with Kamala Harris or Tampon Tim or AOC's or Bernie Sanders' ideas of socialism. No political insult gets thrown around more recklessly these days than the word fascist. Now, the word has been absolutely gutted of meaning, reduced to a club of progressives swing at Donald Trump from people like Stephen Miller and the late Charlie Kirk. Democrats and their media allies casually smear conservatives as extremists who follow the fascist playbook. Joe Biden himself dragged the rhetoric to a new low in September of 2022, standing in front of Liberty Hall. You remember that speech? Where it was all red in the background and he had the Marine station. I mean, I was amazed that an American president actually gave that speech. But he declared that MAGA Republicans are extremists and enemies of democracy. They embrace anger, Biden thundered. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. Weeks earlier at a fundraiser in Maryland, he even called the MAGA movement semi-fascist. Now, the smear reveals less about conservatives and more about the authoritarian left and their streak buried in the left's own philosophy. Say what you want about Trump's sharp elbows in politics, but he never demonized American voters as enemies of the republic. Now, the press, yes, the press are the enemies of the republic. Biden did, and Democrats have repeated that same smear ever since. The question is, what happens to a country when its leaders brand millions of citizens as fascists? The goals of the MAGA movement are plain: protect natural rights, foster prosperity, expand energy access, secure the border, reduce crime, preserve domestic peace, pursue foreign policy rooted in prudence and peace. These aims hardly resemble fascism, yet defenders of liberty now find themselves caricatured as authoritarians. Now, to see how absurd this charge is, it helps to remember what fascism actually means, and most people don't know what that word means. The intellectual father of fascism was Giovanni Gentile, an Italian philosopher born in 1875. Following Georg Hegel, he saw the rational state of the end point of history. He defined true democracy not as liberty, but as the individual's willing subordination to the state. What does that sound like? For Gentile, public and private interests were one and the same. To serve society was to serve the state. His student, Benito Mussolini, turned this philosophy into doctrine. All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state. Interestingly enough, Benito Mussolini was a member of the Communist Party in Italy, but they kicked him out because he was too communist. Imagine that. A group of communists kicking out one of their own because they're too radical. Contrary to today's rhetoric, fascism did not begin on the right. Mussolini himself was a Marxist. He and Antonio Gramsci broke with Leninist revolution but retained socialism's collectivist core. Fascism emphasized nationalism, racial particularity, and the total authority of the state, summed up in the term blood and soil. Its very name came from the Latin word fasces, the Roman bundle of rods bound to an axe, symbolizing unity and power. Fascism arose in the economic chaos of the 1920s and the 1930s. Italy and Germany launched massive public works programs funded by confiscatory taxes, borrowing, and the printing of money. As with communism, fascism treated every American as an employee and tenant of the party-run state. Force and coercion were essential. Mussolini was blunt on this, though. The individual's antisocial right to resist the state did not exist. Fascism, my friends, is a creature of the left. And in Germany, which is the example that most people use, the National Socialists later became the Nazi Party. National Socialists, the left. And so the smear that the Democrat Party uses with us Republicans is they're all fascists. Well, one, it shows their ignorance of history, but two, it's the whole principle of repeat a lie long enough and as many times as you possibly can, and eventually people will believe it. The American version of the 1930s response to the Great Depression, of course, was the New Deal. Now, the New Deal pushed socialism in America. It was Stuart Chase who wrote the book, The Road We Are Traveling, and in it, he wrote the 10 steps needed to, and he didn't know what the system was going to be called. He called it System X. But if you look at the 10 steps that he needed to take to enact socialism, that's exactly what it was. Control of healthcare, control of the economy, control of the means of production, all of those things. And Stuart Chase was good friends with FDR. And it was Stuart Chase that came up with the phrase, the New Deal. And so all of this discussion of fascism on the right, and I encourage you to go to the Blaze and check out this article. It goes on for quite a while, but it's an excellent description of what fascism actually is. Well, we've burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program, broadcast 2 hours, and the end of another busy broadcast week. We'll be back on Monday, like I told you, on the podcast Monday. I'm going to publish the interview with my friend Ovi Muntean. If you really want to know what socialism looks like, he's the man to ask. He's going to be at the Reagan Day dinner in Sheridan on October 11th. Go to the Sheridan County GOP website for tickets. You better hurry up, because pretty soon you won't be able to buy them. So anyway, have a good weekend, my friends. From the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. Have a good weekend, my friends. We'll see you next week.